Thank you. So here we are at Zoom Ramble, and today we're going to call this story Looking for Jules' Farm. I have recently met a singing teacher whose last name is Jewel with a double L, and I'm convinced somehow that her family must be connected with the family that was originally there in Jules' Farm. So it's called Looking for Jules' Farm. My story begins with a huge decision I had to make when I lived in America. I lived in America 7 years, and at the end, I had a choice to make between working in Michigan for a big timber frame company or moving to Berkshire and apprenticing myself to a top timber framer in Britain. After 7 years, I was ready to come home. I had an amazing time in America. I'd learned so much. I was a timber framer, and realizing I could come back to Britain and work as a timber framer. There's always timber frame going to happen in Britain because there are lots of old buildings that need repairing, and there's rather wealthy people who might commission a new build, or a local authority or an organization might want a big exhibition space or a barn or something. So I decided to move back to Britain. I came down to interview for my job in the village of STANFORD, DINGLEY in Berkshire. Got the train to Pangbourne. The bus came to pick me up, speeded me off for interview, and I got the job. Now, my boss, let's call him for the purposes of this story, Mr. McCurdle. My boss wanted me to go and live in a bedsit in Reading. Now, I'd moved here from upstate New York, and definitely, of all things, did not want to live in a bedsit in Reading. I wanted to live in Stanford Dingley. It's a beautiful little village in Berkshire. You drive down the lane, down the Dingley Dell, you get there, and so what if you have to be very rich to live in Stanford Dingley? Um, you do. You have to be a millionaire virtually. But I had decided that the best way of finding somewhere to live, something to open up for me, was to be there, not in a bed sit in Reading, looking at newspapers and adverts, but to be in the village and getting to know the people who live there, people who go to the pub, the village pub. So in my head, I wanted to live there. Um, in the yard that we had, our timber framing yard, there was a caravan that was used as a for breaks where we could make a cup of tea and have our lunch or whatever. I asked my boss if I could stay over on a Friday night in that caravan so I could get up early and get out and about and knock on doors to see if I could find somewhere to camp through the summer months, and in so doing, find a place to live. My boss said, no, you can't stay in the caravan. Well, um, this was a surprising thing. It wasn't very acceptable to me. It sounded mean. I stayed in that caravan. I got up really in the morning and I got going, knocking on doors. I had an OS map, a very detailed map of that area. Um, Stanford Dingley. There's a little river runs through that village called the River Pang. It's only a tiny trickle most of the time, but I thought, oh, it'd be really nice to find somewhere to camp by the River Pang and walk over the fields and get to the workshop. That's what I wanted. It sounded great. And I found farms in that area, and I thought, oh, great. You go knock on the door early and you catch the farmer before he's out and about. That was my idea. This was 1987. I've been in America 7 years. I come back. I find myself knocking on these farmhouse doors, and these very splendid gentlemen are coming to the front door in their silk gowns, going, "What do you want?" And they weren't farms anymore. Those farms have been bought by merchant bankers. And anyway, they listened to what I wanted, and all the doors that I knocked on, all the people said the same thing. The men said the same thing. They said, "There's common land next to your workplace, and if you go and talk to the parish council, they'll probably agree to you camping on the common land there. It's right there. Sheep grazing there, but I can't think of any reason why they would say no, you can't camp there." I went back to the workshop, and my boss, Mr. McCurdle, was there. I said, "Oh, I've got good news. I'm constantly being told that that land over there, that's common land, and I will get permission to camp there from the parish council. What do you think about that?" Well, my poor boss, Mr. McCardle, started changing colour on me as I was telling him, sharing my good news. And the idea for him that I would be out there, I was just by the workshop in a tent, um, being visibly exposed to the village. He didn't like this idea at all. He changed colour on me. Now, I recognize that going through life, there are moments where you say your truth and people start changing color on you, and it's not good. It usually means they're very upset, they're really angry, and something bad is about to happen. Well, something bad was about to happen, and he said, "No, I forbid it. You can't go and camp in that land there. No, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to find something else." Well, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he was being so mean with me. Um, And yeah, I was the lowest of the low. He was the boss. I was on a trial period with him. I had to be sweet about it. So I mustered my sweetness and managed to smile and nod and say, "Okay, yes, well, I'll just go and find something else then." Oh, no, that wasn't what I was thinking, but that's what I was saying to my boss. So I leave and I think, well, what am I going to do? Well, I've been walking around this lane that comes out the village because on the map there was a place called Jules Farm. And I thought, well, Jules Farm, what a funny name. That's like a magic name. That's like the treasure there. It's a magic place. But when I walked up and down the lane, I couldn't see Jules Farm at all, not where it was supposed to be, not where it was marked on the map. I couldn't see it. So I thought, I'll go back and see if I can find Jules' farm. So I went up and down the lane. I could not find it. It was becoming more mysterious and more magical with each moment. Why can't I find this place? It's marked on the map. It wouldn't be marked on the map if it wasn't there. Well, what is there? What was there was a great big house, a huge house, an old house, maybe 18th, 19th century. Very smart drive, gravel driveway up to it. Didn't look like a farm at all. But I thought, well, it's the only thing. There isn't anything else. I don't have anything else. I've knocked on loads of doors. I've talked to a lot of people by this time. The whole village knows what I'm doing, what I'm after, and has already told me, given me a solution. So I go up the drive. I knock on the door. It's not like an ordinary front door to a house. It's a huge, big oak door. Um, yeah, it was old fashioned and oh, it was gorgeous. I knock on the door. Big old knocker. So the door slowly opens, and there's this man there. He's a very tall, elderly gentleman, maybe 6'6" or 6'8", and he's a bit stooped. He looks at me in puzzlement. I explain. I tell him the whole story that I'd knocked on lots of doors. People had told me to camp in the common land, and my boss had said no, and that I had to find something else. And does he have any idea for me about where I can camp so I can go and work for Mr. McCurdle? Now, I don't realize it at all, do I? But it is Jules' farm, and he is not a farmer. He is a Tory MP. He is the chairman of the Commons Select Committee on Agriculture. His constituency is around Boston, Lincolnshire, on the other side of the country. He takes an interest in me as if he was a concerned MP for his constituents. You can see this. These MPs, they have their ways of being concerned for their constituent and want to help. But he did genuinely want to help me, and he invited me in to his amazing house, into the old-fashioned kitchen. It was like walking into the 1950s. It was kind of amazing. He introduced me to his lovely wife, who his name was Sir Richard Body, so her name was Lady Body. Very sweet, lovely woman. Um, I would later find out that she was one of the women who worked at Bletchley. She was one of the code breakers. Um, they probably met at this time. Um, what an amazing woman she must have been, but I didn't know that. She just made the tea. Of course, the tea would be real tea with real tea leaves and a proper pot of tea and a couple of cups. We sat at the kitchen table. Sir Richard goes into deep thought. You could see his brow was furrowing. He was really trying to solve. This was an interesting puzzle for him. He as well as his many other titles, he was also a barrister and very much had a barrister's brain, of problem solving, of logical thought, of logical reasoned argument. This is what his whole life was about, really. And he's thinking about my situation. And he goes into deep thought. I'm enjoying the tea. I'm enjoying being in his kitchen in the 50s and meeting him and his lovely wife. He says, "Oh, Elias, I've got it." It's like a light bulb moment. Elliot, I'm a rare breeder and I have these bloodhounds here. And I had to make a run for them on the grounds of the house so that if we didn't want to take them out, at least we could give them a run right here without losing them, without them taking off. Come and have a look. So I go and walk with him, and yeah, he's about this steel wire mesh run, and we walk into it and along it, and at a point, it's widened out, and he says, "This is it, Elliot. You could. There's enough room here where you can pitch a tent." So there's all these bushes around it. There's no view. It's obviously really midgy and insecty. And of course, every so often you can have a run of bloodhounds coming right through. And I'm thinking, oh God, this is not going to work. I can't see this going to work. This is not my dream. I'm not by the river Pang in the beautiful view and the beautiful place. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in fear and anxiety. That's no good. I said, Sir Richard, it's really kind of you, but I don't think this is the right place to camp. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I'm really sorry because I know you're trying to help me, but no. So this was getting very strange that somebody is offering you a place to camp, and you're saying, no, it's not good enough for me. Back to the kitchen we go. Lady Buddy makes another pot of tea, second pot of tea. Sir Richard goes back into deep thought, something that's becoming rather familiar to me by this point. And then he has his little light bulb moment after a little while. He says, "Ah, oh, I've got it. Now, Elliot, look out the window here. Got a big window in the kitchen. See those fields over there? Well, as I told you, I'm a rare breeder, And you see those cattle over there and their great big horns. They are the cattle that the Texas Longhorn cattle were bred from. And I've got a special breed of those cattle here. And they're in that field, and you could camp in that field. Well, I don't know much about cattle and camping, but I do know the cattle like to rub their horns on things. So I could see going to work, coming back to a completely knackered tent. And so I, for the second time, I said, no, um, I don't think that's going to work. I think those cattle are going to do my tent. No, I don't think that's doable. And there I was saying no for the second time to this guy who's trying to help me. Oh, in the kitchen, third pot of tea, deep thought, deep thought goes on. I'm really enjoying just the strangeness of this whole situation. This guy trying to help me. I'm saying no. Um, I don't know what I'm thinking at this point. I'm just enjoying the bizarreness of the whole situation. Anyway, after a while, he has this light bulb moment and he goes, "Oh, Elliot, I've got it. My daughter was here last summer and she camped at the bottom of our garden with her fiance and had a wonderful time. So let's go down and have a look and see if it's any good for you." We walk down the garden, the weeping willow trees, the lawn. At the bottom of the garden, it all starts to get a bit rough. And there is the River Pang. There's a great big block of wood, plank of wood. There's a bridge over the Pang. And on the other side of the river, there's a public right of way. You go up the right of way just a little bit, and there's a stile into the triangular field that leads directly into the workshop. And so I know, God, this is perfect. This is great. So I say, this is great. Sir Richard doesn't need any money from me, so I've got uh, free camping there for as long as I need it. Um, I stay there, perfect for me. My boss is mortified. I get to be in the village. Uh, I was there about 3 or 4 months, and in that time, I did get offered a house that was opening up in the village. I could have taken that house and shared it and managed to live in STANFORD Dingley and be part of that place. Because regardless of income and money, people who live there are part of the place. Um, uh, yeah, I became quite good friends with Sir Richard. He was really lovely. He would come home. We would talk about affairs of state at the end of the day. This is the time when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, who I personally hated, and Sir Richard, would be at loggerheads with. Turned out Sir Richard was not climbing the greasy pole to be part of her government. He was an independent-minded Tory MP. He had a big brain. He had lots of things to say about agriculture. I ended up reading his books and things and understanding his point of view. And we used to have a splendid time just sitting around drinking tea on the lawn and talking about affairs of state and this and that and the other. Um, and we enjoyed each other. There was a point where he was trying to explain to me that the 6 million figure that is quoted for the victims of the Holocaust wasn't an accurate figure, and 6 million Jews did not get killed in the Holocaust. Well, I'm Jewish, and I was kind of listening to this, thinking, "What the hell is this?" and not knowing what I can say or what I can do. And Ladybody could see my discomfort and got Sir Richard to change the subject. But this is really typical of how he would think about things, about his passion for the accuracy of statements, the accuracy of numbers, and this and that and the other. Well, let me tell you some of the things about Sir Richard and my experience staying there. Um, the first thing was he had to introduce me to his pack of bloodhounds, and yeah, I should say that yeah, as these were hunting hounds. It was a pack for hunting, but it wasn't hunting animals. It wasn't for going out hunting foxes and the like. Bloodhounds were packs that were to find people. So the escaped convict or the criminal who just fled from the scene or somebody who was missing or whatever. There could be any number of reasons why a pack of bloodhounds could come in useful in the old days. And he said, I've got to introduce you to the hounds so they know who you are and don't tear you to pieces, kind of thing. So uh, there is a bit of the old farm there. There's an old low building and cattle gate and fencing. And so we go up to the gate and all the hounds come out to see us. And he says, put your hand in there. Well, I'm a timber framer. I'm a carpenter. My hands are like my most precious bits. These hands, they have taken me through life making things. And I did not want to put my hand in there. And he said, go on, put your hand in there. I said, no, I don't want to put my hand in there. My hands are so precious to me. He said, don't be silly, Elliot. Just put your hand in there. So I didn't see what choice I had at this point. I had to kind of close my eyes and put my hand in there. And of course, they'll just lick it to death and then they pick up my smell and they know who I am. So I'm there for 3 or 4 months and I get to help Sir Richard and Lady Buddy take their hounds out for a run. And in some of the fields around there, if the hay had been cut, then there was this ankle length stubble left in the fields, and this would be perfect for picking up a scent. So Sir Richard would take me to the field and he'd have me lay out a trail, not a straight trail, not a straight line, but weaving all around in the field, and then hide behind some bushes and let the hounds find you and lick you to death. So I would go out and do that. But the hounds, they would come, and there were a couple of old hounds at the top of that pack, the venerable elders of the pack. They would go around, but if they picked up a scent of something that was more interesting than Mr. Ellie, they would be off. And of course, I was the only one who could keep up with them, even to try to keep up with them. So I would start legging it and bounding across the field to try and catch up with them, which was impossible. And there was a concern that they would find some horrible rotting carcass and want to eat it and make themselves ill. Um, uh, Years later, when I visited Sir Richard, and occasionally I would go and say hello and have a little catch up, he said to me, Elliot, when you were running with the hounds, it was like watching a stag. And I bet it was pretty amazing at that time. There was another time when they'd been invited to join a hunt down a river in Dorset to see if they could catch the mink. And mink had been released or escaped from mink farms. And of course, once they're out, they just want to kill everything. They're just trouble. So hunting mink is like it's kind of an okay thing to do. So I went out one day. I got invited with Sir Richard, and honestly, it was like a play for today. Everybody who came on that hunt was A, deeply eccentric, and B, had a hip flask that they were going to share. So everyone was merry. We just walked, strolled along down this river. Nobody caught a damn thing that day, didn't get a sniff of anything. But it was such a pleasure to get out and about. Um, it was kind of an experience of a hunt that you don't really ever get to have. You only hear about the bad and terrible things that go on. I'm sure they do, and I'm sure I'm not in favor of hunting with hounds particularly, but going out with Sir Richard on that day and pretend hunting for mink, wow, that was something that really doesn't happen very often in my life, this view into this other world and Toriness and the rest of it. So I'm there working. It's not going very well where I'm working. I've moved from upstate New York. I've been in America 7 years. I grew up in Liverpool. I'm a very vocal person. I say what I think. I was working in a very different place in STANFORD, DINGLEY in Berkshire. A very quiet place. The guys I worked with, they never ever shared what they were thinking. They never spoke anything. It was just a very difficult situation to be in. I didn't like it. I wasn't comfortable there. I didn't work very well because I wasn't very happy there. My boss was so mean, so tight with his money. I didn't even eat every day. I was kind of living off muesli and whatever I could get on the market on the Saturday or whatever. Um, I was young enough that I could do this. I could go and do a day's work, go out with the dogs in the night and not even eat sometimes. And I felt everything was going right except in the work. And I was not going to moan to my boss about not being able to eat and my own unhappiness working there and the mistakes that I made. And I wasn't very good at accounting for myself, which is a big thing. Um, And in the end, I didn't get the job. I didn't get the position. Sir Richard was absolutely crestfallen that things didn't work out for me. Other people in the village were crestfallen because by this point I was becoming part of the village. And yeah, my boss was very impressed that I did actually manage to find a house that I could have lived in if I stayed there. Um, but it was not to be. But I really had an amazing time when I was there. And I did find Jules Farm. And it was an incredible treasure, an incredible experience to live there. Sometimes Sir Richard and his wife were away and they'd let me use the bath in the bathroom. And Sir Richard, being a very tall guy, had this enormous bath. So occasionally I get in there and have this incredible bath which I would particularly love. And yeah, it was a real pleasure getting to know these people. Yeah, and I've more or less come to the end of this story about finding Jules Farm. It was amazing to find it, amazing to be there, amazing to stay there. Some mornings I wake up and Sir Richard will be being interviewed by a television crew outside my tent. That's how strange it was being there. Um, Sometime there was an inundation and the River Pang was not a trickle anymore, but it was a flood and it looked like it would flood my tent. It didn't actually flood the tent, but it certainly could radically change in a day. Uh, yeah, the forces of nature. Um, anyway, it was amazing to live there. It was amazing to be there. Life felt like such an adventure. And yeah, I'm still left actually not really knowing anything about the family that was the Jules family that had that farm, but I bet they had it for generations, and it would have been very, very lush, very, very good land. Um, that place is one of the asparagus centres in the UK. Yes, it had very beautiful fresh asparagus, and wow. Stanford Dingley, you're out there somewhere in this hidden part of the Dingley Dell. Yeah. Well, that's my story about you finding Jules Farm, being at Jules Farm. How amazing it was to be there and meet Sir Richard Buddy and learn about what's going on in the mind of the chairman of the Commons Select Committee on Agriculture. Yeah.
Excellent.
He had yeah, he had ideas like he would add up all the public subsidy that farmers had, since subsidies were introduced. He'd add that figure all up, and that figure exactly equated to the increase in the value of the landowners. It's a funny thing in this country. The taxpayers have paid all the landowners the increased value of their land since agricultural subsidies were introduced. Now, isn't that completely mad? That's not what taxation is supposed to be about. This transfer of wealth from people who pay taxes to people who pay the land. But that's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's what is still going on today. It's just an absolute racket. Well, he saw it for what it was and he called it out. Well, he did many things like this. So, in learning about what he was thinking about and what he was arguing for, it was quite interesting. At the time when John Major became Prime Minister, there were 8 people who were voting against the Maastricht Treaty, and that was Richard. Sir Richard was one of those people. John Major called these people bastards in public on TV because they voted against the Maastricht Treaty. But I can tell you, Sir Richard Buddy was not a bastard at all. He was a very clever guy. He only had one eye. He'd come out of Parliament one day and he'd be mugged, and the mugger had booted him in the eye, and he lost his eye. Um, Sir Richard was not bitter. He wasn't bitter about people who were at the bottom, the kind of people who kick your eye out. He was an amazing man. He's a very clever guy, and it was one of the great treats in life that I got to meet him, that he was able to help me, and yeah, Jules Farm, full of treasure. I
Lovely.
found it. Great. There we are.
Fantastic.